Greetings once again. Here's that brother. Now, I left you guys telling you how the whole pastel color suit collection started. Now here's how Ori grew the little tailor shop that we had into a major manufacturer. As I said, we would cut the garments up and send them downtown. But then Ori said, I could do better and have better control over it. Because see, once you send something to somebody else, you lose a little control over it because you're at their mercy. Now, Ori knew the whole game of manufacturing and whatnot because we periodically brought in tailors to help us along the way. And he just decided, let me just go ahead and hire me a crew. Now, in those days, it wasn't hard to find a good crew. These were capable workers because New York was full of good workers. And not just piece workers, pants makers and tailors. There was a bunch of them out there. A lot of these guys were Dominicans. And they were very, very good tailors way back then. I'm in the 60s. They were some of your best tailors, the Dominicans. We, as black people, hadn't really captured that market yet, and we still haven't. But you had a lot of good Dominicans back then. Now, there were a lot of good tailors, and there were a lot of good black tailors, but they weren't production tailors. And when you go into manufacturing, you need production tailors. So here we are. So by now, Ori had taken a bigger spot. Now that was always the key. If you're going to have these workers, where are you going to put them? So he got a bigger studio. Then he needed equipment. Well, let me tell you what happened back then. You always had one of these jobbers that were going in and out of business. One would spring up, one would go out. See, so it's always that availability of equipment. Well, I'm in the 60s now. This is New York City. So what they would do is they would have an open auction on the whole kit and caboodle, as they say, of all of the equipment in a tailor shop that went out. Now the tailor shop that went out might have a crew of maybe 30, 40 workers, because what it took to run one. Well, we were at a point where we were doing that kind of business, see. So what he did was he found out from a friend of his about a tailor shop going up for bid. So he wanted to bid on it. Now, believe it or not, he was denied access to the bidding on that because he was a black man. So he got a good friend of his who told him about this to make the bid for him. We ended up getting about $50,000 worth of equipment for $6,500, which was a steal. We had pressing machines, we had all the machinery that's needed, we had all the sewing machines, we had all the different types of machines that go into a factory. So he bought the whole thing lock, stock, and barrel, as they say, and we moved it uptown into our building. And because he had several different people that were working for him at the time, because we had built a small crew, but we were doing so much business we needed a big crew. So what do? You ask one of your workers, you got some friends that's sewing. Sure enough, now all of a sudden we got 20 workers there. And we're doing business and we're cranking these suits out, see. And like I say, when it comes to players, hustlers, they want to buy it, they want to wear it, see, because they can go into AJ Lester's and get just a regular, buy it, wear it out of there. Now we're making custom suits. We're turning them over in less than a week's time. Guy could come in on a Monday, order a suit, come Friday, he wearing it for that weekend. And this is what we did. But he needed a crew to do that. Ori put that together. This is how I learned so much about the business, watching him maneuver, okay? Now, he had a guy who was in charge of jackets. He had another guy who was in charge of making the pants, Celso Perez. Now, Celso happened to be Puerto Rican, but the rest of them were Dominicans. We had Dominicans and Republicans, Dominicans and Puerto Ricans. And you know, they always had a thing about, well, it's just like any other people. The Dominicans didn't necessarily like the Puerto Ricans and vice versa, but they got along because this was business. But they lived in their own section of town, and they went back and forth at each other. Sometimes they got into some arguments and heated arguments. We had to go in there and smooth it out. But we had the workers, but you couldn't beat the quality of work that we were turning out and the time factor. This is what made us so popular, because we could turn it out. See? When we did it the other way, if we sold a garment on the weekend, we'd have to get it cut and get it downtown all in the same day for us to get it back Friday. Otherwise, it was the next Friday, because their delivery was always on a Friday. So if you didn't get it downtown in time, you had to wait till next week. When we created our own manufacturing factory, now we could have a guy come in on a Wednesday and say he needed it on Friday and turn it over. Because this were all cash transactions. Because like I said, these players, you got to get the money up front from them. Because like I said, you don't know when they're coming back or if they are coming back. Things happen when you live that kind of life. So the turnover was great. Boy, we were making suits left and right for everybody now. Everybody was coming to Ori's Custom Tailoring. And I'm the manager of his establishment. We had cutters, runners, we had everybody in place. Then we hired Miss Lee, Shing Young Lee. She was a finisher. A lot of times you have to have that. You have to have a finisher too. So, back and forth we went, back and forth we went. We grew from 1965. And it grew, and it grew, and it got to its height. And then all of a sudden, we needed more workers. So we had to move from that establishment on 125th Street to even a bigger one. I watched this man expand a business. I watched him run a business. And like I say, it was phenomenal to see how much business we were generating back in those days. Because like I say, now we got entertainers coming to us. We have the underworld, we had the bad guys coming to us. Now we started getting athletes coming through there. The New York Jets, we had a lot of members that played for the New York Jets that were regular clients of ours, see. But it wasn't just so much that what we did for them, it was a hangout spot. Everybody hung out in Ori's. They loved coming there. We loved having them come there because it was like a communal thing that Ori had going on. And it was a blessing, and I kept learning, and I kept watching him, and I kept watching him maneuver, and I kept watching him grow. And understand, I'm still a young man. I'm in my early 20s. Now I'm going into my mid-20s. And he's paying me very, very well. And I was able to do things for my family that then we moved into even a better location. Every time I turned around, we were moving into a better location and better and better. Not that I didn't want to live in Harlem anymore, but I was at the time when, because of where we lived in Harlem, there was always the streets around us, you know. And unlike myself, I really didn't want my kids, especially my boys, growing up physically in the streets like I did. Nothing wrong with that. Taught me a lot and took very, very good care of me. But I kind of wanted, heck, if nothing else, a little grass. Still didn't get the grass where we kept moving to, but the neighborhoods weren't as congested. I guess maybe that's the way I want to put it. I wanted to move into an area that was not as congested as where we lived in Harlem. Harlem is just congested, more so than a lot of other areas. A lot of other areas have congested areas, but then it'll thin out, and then it get congested again, and then it'll thin out, and it get congested again. Harlem was always congested, always people in the street, all night long. The people would be in the streets of Harlem. But that was okay too, because, you know, like I said, there's a lot of things that people talked about Harlem that weren't really true. How bad Harlem was. There was nothing really bad about Harlem. Like I said before, Harlem was just a neighborhood like any other neighborhood in New York. So, but once Horry grew and now he's a major player, a manufacturer, the whole world changed. And he was one of the few black manufacturers that there were. And at that time, I don't know of another, but we were one. So if you kind of see what was happening in Harlem and on 125th Street and Horry's Custom Tailoring, now you guys understand why I get excited when I talk about Harlem and I talk about the things that really happened there back in the 60s. So I want to leave you on that note, thinking about what it was like being a part of all of this. I'll be back soon with now some more stories about some of the clientele that we had. And now you'll start to see the difference in people. Because now I'm about to get into the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to who we service. But we did. So be blessed. I'll be back.